eyes, embody our spirit, and sing along.
Please flip to page 69 in the Great Hymnal
and join us in singing Give Thanks.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, a beacon of light in this community since 1865. I am the Reverend Kimberley Debus, and I am honored to serve as your sabbatical minister while your senior minister, the Reverend Manish, Mishra-Marzetti, is on a much-deserved time of rest and rejuvenation. A special hello to those who are attending live or watching later. If you are new to us and online right now, I invite you to introduce yourself to each other in the chat, and to all of you to fill out the survey at UUAA.org, newcomer survey, so we can more easily connect with you. If you're new and in person, I invite you to a newcomer welcome held in the Redmond Room after the service. It's just outside the sanctuary doors to the left. There is a sign, and there will be somebody there to answer questions about this congregation and Unitarian Universalism. I do want to offer a couple of announcements, and I'll tell you, I had to rehearse in the first service how to say this. We're hosting the Washtenaw County Interfaith, thank you. The Interfaith, it was a thing. But we're hosting the Washtenaw County Interfaith Gathering for Peace and Unity to be held right here in the sanctuary at 4 p.m. this afternoon, and all are welcome. Second, be sure to join us for pie in the social hall after the service. If you're attending online, I hope you have pie nearby or plans to get some. Now, let us breathe together and find ourselves present in this place, a place of holding and healing. We pause to acknowledge the lives lost around the globe to war and violence. And we also hold in love those souls of sacred memories whose passing we mark on the Trans Day of Remembrance, which falls tomorrow on November 20th. The Reverend Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf writes, "May we come to a time when we cease to shame children around gender roles and expression, where we allow for freedom and exploration of identity and expression, and a world that operates from love, especially when things are difficult and confusing." Settle in a little deeper with these words from the Reverend Gretchen Haley. We carry our hearts through the door tucked or tender, bold or bursting, we bring them here with us. Set ourselves down into this circle with our hearts still beating. Curious, craving, some beaming with joy, with life, with gratitude, others hanging heavy with grief, anger, regret. Whatever the pull, they are ours, these hearts, shaped by the stories of our lives, these comings and goings, these losses and victories, the ways we keep trying to make sense of it all. Whatever the shape of your heart, it is welcome here. Be not afraid of judgment, being not enough, being too much. Be not afraid to bring your whole self, war-torn, weary, and whispering. Each day, with more urgency, calls, come on, life, come on, we need more for all of us, more life, abundantly. Come, let us worship together.
Hello, I'm Gurkirat. I'm a newer lay clergy member, and I'll be leading our chalice lighting. Something I appreciate about being newer to Unitarian Universalism is that I'm steadily becoming more familiar with the components of our services and the meanings we assign to them. There still remains something novel about even the more predictable parts of our service for me. Through repetition, our brains create shortcuts around what we think we already know. Because I have yet to repeat these practices enough times to have them memorized, I'm still called to pay attention to the words we recite and consider what they mean for me at the moment. I invite you all to take comfort in the familiarity of our communal practices while maintaining a commitment to understanding our practices anew. When we repeat the intention behind lighting the chalice, I wish to call us to consider what these words might mean in our present moment under our present conditions. This Sunday, Scott Laudick will join us in physically lighting our community's chalice. Would Scott Laudick please join us on the chancel now? If you're joining us online, please ready your own chalice or candle and let us know in the chat from where your flame is burning. Please join me as we say together, we light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Thank you, Scott. While these four purposes for lighting our chalice are rich and complex, today I'm struck by the pronoun we. Though the literal lighting was performed by Scott, using the pronoun we collectivizes the act of lighting, enabling one actor to stand in for us all. The pronoun we asks us not only to consider who all constitutes this community, but also what exactly is the act of lighting a chalice. Those of us who did not literally light the chalice still lit the chalice. The idea of what lighting is expands through our we. Lighting is not only the literal act Scott performed. When we light the chalice, the idea of lighting includes bearing witness to the literal lighting, committing to its various purposes. The idea of a we also shapes the meaning of our covenant. Together we announce our shared commitments and make a promise to one another. While it might seem on the surface that we are only extending our commitments to each other, when we say that the law of our church is service, we assert that our commitments extend beyond this particular place, this particular community. Let us remember and consider anew that our covenant lies at the heart of our communal life. Please join me as we say these words with intention. The spirit of our church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you.
As the Chalice Sparks come forward, I'm going to invite them to join me here on the chancel. So come on up, Sparks. And they're going to help teach you what I think of as a love song to pie, but I don't know if that's how the Shakers who wrote this song thought of it. But this is a song called A Mince Pie or a Pudding, and the Chalice Sparks and I would like to teach it to you. So I wonder if first you might just repeat after me, learning the words with the help of the Chalice Sparks. Welcome here, welcome here.
Welcome here, welcome here.
All be alive and be of good cheer.
All be alive and be of good cheer.
I've got a pie all baked complete.
I've got a pie all baked complete.
And pudding too, that's very sweet.
And pudding too, that's very sweet.
They learned that pretty fast. Do you think they're ready for some music? All right, Mina, what do we tell them?
Please rise in body or spirit or
You got it.
Please repeat after us.
All right, so repeat after these Chalice Sparks, please. Chalice Sparks, let's start with welcome here. Ready? And one.
Welcome here, welcome here.
Welcome here, welcome here.
All be alive and be of good cheer.
All be alive and be. I've got a pie.
I've got a pie all baked complete.
I've got a pie all baked complete.
And pudding too, that's very sweet.
And pudding too, that's very sweet. What do you think, Ari?
That sounded pretty good. Now let's try it all together.
All right, so repeat after the Chalice Sparks, but they will continue to lead us. Welcome here. Ready? And.
Welcome here, welcome here. All be alive and be of good cheer.
Welcome here, welcome here. All be alive and be of good cheer.
I've got a pie all baked complete. And pudding too, that's very sweet.
I've got a pie all baked complete. And pudding too, that's very sweet. I think they've got it. Do you think we could trick them with the surprise bit? Okay, there are no tricks, just sing. Welcome here, ready? And
Welcome here, welcome here. All be alive and be of good cheer.
welcome. Welcome here,
Welcome here. All be alive and be of
I've got a
good
pie.
cheer. I've got a pie all baked complete. And pudding too, that's very sweet. I've got a pie all baked complete. And pudding too, that's very
Welcome.
sweet. Welcome here, welcome here. All be alive and be of good cheer. Welcome here, welcome here. All be alive and be of
I've got a pie.
I've got a pie all baked complete. And pudding too, that's very sweet. I've got a pie all baked complete. And pudding too, that's very
Welcome.
sweet. Welcome here, welcome here. All be alive and be of good cheer. Welcome here, welcome here. All be alive and be of good cheer.
I've got a pie.
I've got a pie all baked complete.
Last time.
Pudding too, that's very sweet. I've got a pie all baked complete. And pudding too, that's very sweet.
We've got some new pies.
Please be seated.
Thank you. Great job, everybody. Great job.
In this season of gratitude and generosity, when we aspire to set aside our differences and come together in the spirit of compassion and belonging, let us look to the humble, delicious, versatile pie as a model for building a strong, resilient community. Our Time for All Ages this morning teaches us about the power of pie to transform hearts and bring people together. Enemy Pie, written by Derek Munson, and brought to you in the style of Reader's Theater. It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a treehouse in our backyard. My sister was at camp for 3 whole weeks. And I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been a perfect summer. But it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood, right next door to my best friend, Stanley. I did not like Jeremy Ross. He laughed at me when he struck me out in a baseball game. He had a party on his trampoline, and I wasn't even invited. But my best friend Stanley was. Jeremy Ross was the one and only person on my enemy list. I never even had an enemy list until he moved into the neighborhood. But as soon as he came along, I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse where Jeremy Ross was not allowed to go. Dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too, but he knew of a way to get rid of them. I asked him to tell me how.
Tell you how. Oops. It is on. Tell you how? I'll show you how.
He pulled a really old recipe book off the kitchen shelf. Inside, there was a worn-out scrap of paper with faded writing. Dad held it up and squinted at it.
Here it is. Enemy pie.
You may be wondering what exactly is in enemy pie. I was wondering too.
This recipe is so secret, I can't even tell you.
I decided it must be magic. Please tell me something, anything?
I will tell you this. Enemy pie is the fastest known way to get rid of enemies.
Now, of course, this got my mind working. What kinds of things, disgusting things, would I put into a pie for an enemy? I brought Dad some weeds from the garden, but he just shook his head. I brought him earthworms and rocks, but he didn't think he'd need those. I gave him the gum I'd been chewing all morning. He gave it right back to me. I went out to play alone. I shot baskets until the ball got stuck on the roof. I threw a boomerang that never came back to me. And all the while, I listened to the sounds of my dad chopping and stirring and blending the ingredients of enemy pie. This could be a great summer after all. Enemy pie was going to be awful. I tried to imagine how horrible it must smell, or worse yet, what it would look like. But when I was in the backyard looking for ladybugs, I smelled something really, really, really good. And as far as I could tell, it was coming from our kitchen. I was a bit confused. Dad, something is wrong. Enemy pie shouldn't smell this good.
Ah, but if enemy pie smelled bad, your enemy would never eat it.
I could tell he'd made enemy pie before. The buzzer rang, and Dad put on the oven mitts and pulled the pie out of the oven. It looked like plain old pie. It looked good enough to eat. I was catching on. But still, I wasn't really sure how this enemy pie worked. What exactly did it do to enemies? Maybe it made their hair fall out, or their breath stinky. Maybe it made bullies cry. Please tell me. I asked Dad, but he was no help. He wouldn't tell me a thing. But while the pie cooled, he filled me in on my job.
Okay, there is one part of enemy pie that I can't do. In order for it to work, you need to spend a day with your enemy. Even worse, you have to be nice to him. It's not easy, but that's the only way that enemy pie can work. Are you sure you want to go through with this?
Of course. It sounded horrible. It was scary. But it was worth a try. All I had to do was spend one day with Jeremy Ross. Then he'd be out of my hair for the rest of my life. I rode my bike to his house and knocked on the door. When Jeremy opened the door, he seemed surprised. He stood on the other side of the screen door and looked at me, waiting for me to say something. "Can you play?" He looked confused.
I'll go ask my mom.
He came back with his shoes in his hand. His mom walked around the corner to say hello. We rode bikes for a while and played on the trampoline. Then we made some water balloons and threw them at the neighbor girls. But we missed. Jeremy's mom made us lunch. After lunch, we went over to my house. It was strange, but I was kind of having fun with my enemy. He almost seemed nice. But of course, I couldn't tell Dad that since he had worked so hard to make this enemy pie. Jeremy Ross liked my basketball hoop. He said he wished he had a basketball hoop, but that they didn't have room for one. I let him win a game, just to be nice. Jeremy Ross knew how to throw a boomerang. He threw it, and it came right back to him. I threw it, and it went over my house and into my backyard. Well, when we climbed over the fence to find it, the first thing Jeremy noticed was my treehouse. My treehouse was my treehouse. I was the boss. If my sister wanted in, I didn't have to let her. If my dad wanted in, I didn't have to let him. And if Jeremy wanted in,
Go in?
I knew he was going to ask me that. But he was the top person, the only person on my enemy list. And enemies aren't allowed in my treehouse. But he did teach me how to throw a boomerang. And he did have me over for lunch. And he did let me play on his trampoline. He wasn't being a very good enemy. Okay, but hold on. I climbed up ahead of him and tore the enemy list off my wall. I had a checkerboard and some cards in the treehouse, and we played games until my dad called us down for dinner.
Dinner time! Come on down, kids. I made macaroni and cheese.
That's my favorite!
Mine too.
Maybe Jeremy Ross wasn't so bad after all. I was beginning to think that maybe we should just forget about this enemy pie. But sure enough, after dinner, Dad brought out the pie. I watched as he cut the pie into 8 thick slices. Dad, it sure is nice having a new friend in the neighborhood. I was trying to get his attention and trying to tell him that Jeremy Ross was no longer my enemy. But Dad only smiled and nodded. I think he thought I was just pretending. Dad dished up 3 plates, side by side, with big pieces of pie and giant scoops of ice cream. He passed one to me and one to Jeremy.
Wow, my dad never makes pies like this.
It was at this point that I panicked. I didn't want Jeremy to eat enemy pie. He was my friend. I couldn't let him eat it. Jeremy, don't eat it. It's a bad pie. I think it's poisonous or something. Oh, I felt relieved. I had saved his life. I was a hero.
If it's so bad, why has your dad already eaten half of it?
I turned to look at my dad. Sure enough, he was eating enemy pie.
Good stuff.
And that was all he said. I sat there, watching them eat enemy pie for a few seconds. Dad was laughing. Jeremy was happily eating. And neither of them was losing any hair. It seemed safe enough, so I took a tiny taste. Enemy pie was delicious. After dessert, Jeremy rode his bike home, but not before inviting me over to play on his trampoline in the morning. He said he'd teach me how to flip. As for enemy pie, I still don't know how to make it. I still wonder if enemies really do hate it, or if their hair falls out or their breath turns bad. But I don't know if I'll ever get an answer, because I just lost my best enemy. The end. And now is the time in our service when we sing our children and youth to their programs. This morning, all of our K through 5th graders, listen to me, don't run away. You're gonna follow me to the Jackson Chapel for a music and worship children's chapel. So remember to walk, not run, as the congregation sings with love and affection.
Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. For you I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people, your divine, my divine.
Once a month, we highlight one of the many groups in this congregation that are dedicated to doing social justice work within and beyond this community. This week, we will hear from Sandy Isle about this congregation's long connection with the nonprofit Interfaith Hospitality Network at Alpha House. Sandy coordinates the Alpha House committee here. Please welcome her to our pulpit.
My name is Sandy Isle, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm an average white woman. My curly brown hair, shot through with gray, falls to my shoulders. I am wearing a heathered maroon t-shirt over a black thermal shirt and jeans. I serve this congregation as the coordinator of the Alpha House Committee, supporting our partner nonprofit, Interfaith Hospitality Network, which UUAA and other congregations founded over 30 years ago. Together, we make Alpha House possible. This shelter supports families and children experiencing temporary homelessness to build a better future. I started attending UUAA in 2010, and because I like to cook, I quickly found a home as a volunteer at Alpha House. Each host week, I would sign up to serve the pizza dinner on Friday. One night, I was cleaning up after dinner, and a child faced me, shouting, "Thank you for the pizza!" A love of pizza was something I shared with this kid. Turns out, Friday pizza isn't an every week occurrence. It's a tradition specific to UUAA. This interaction drove home a point. Our neighbors who stay at Alpha House temporarily after an illness or a job loss are not so different from me. We all enjoy a few pieces of pizza on the occasional Friday. The reason I stayed on as an Alpha House volunteer is that our commitment only comes around once in a while. We host meals at the shelter for 4 weeks of the year, typically February, April, June, and November. You can bring your kids with you when you supervise children's activity time after dinner. You can make a dish for dinner or weekend breakfast and drop it off at the front door. You can bring a gallon of milk, or you can order the pizzas. We break the problem down into manageable tasks so every family can do something. But we still have work to do. Over 30 years after UUAA and other area congregations founded Interfaith Hospitality Network, the reasons why Washtenaw County families end up needing the support of caseworkers and congregations at Alpha House are complex. Systemic racism, access to affordable child care, gender discrimination, affordable housing, and much more. Actually, the situation is more dire than in recent years. Over 100 families in our county are on the list waiting for emergency shelter, and we can only shelter 6 families at a time. It gives me chills thinking about the upcoming winter. And it takes more money today to feed those 6 families when we host. In 2023, our quarterly grocery trip providing goods like Lysol, laundry detergent, microwave soup, and cereal has cost $875 on average. Our November Host Week starts tomorrow and runs through Sunday, November 26th, so the week includes a Thanksgiving feast. To donate or volunteer, visit our volunteer sign-up at uua.org/alpha-signup, or use the QR code on your screen. If you've never volunteered before, contact Alpha House at uua.org to ask questions and to join our email list so that you can be notified next time there's a call to action. I'll also be in the social hall after this service to answer questions. Turn right at the doors and go towards the coffee for the social justice table. And I'll be signing up volunteers for any additional spots that are available for this week and receiving donations too. Finally, if you care about family housing and security, we need you. We need a couple of dedicated folks to make this committee run. It doesn't take much time, and you can choose when and how you contribute. I'm asking for help because I support this cause and want this decades-long commitment to continue for many years into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Each week we engage in the spiritual practice of generosity and giving. While the offering is specifically a time when we ask for your financial gifts, there are many other ways to be generous. I have often stood here and tried to make a case for why your gift of time as a volunteer is so important. I see these two things, money and time, as intertwined. We need money to keep the church running, for example, to pay for utilities and to pay staff, so that we have a place and the leadership to keep the programs and ministries of this congregation running, so that we can do the work to support our vision and values. And that work won't happen without your help as a volunteer. Alpha House is just one example. The enormous amount of work it takes to provide what we do for the families in need just could not happen without volunteer time. So I invite both of your gifts today. Sign up to volunteer to do one small thing, whether at Alpha House or in some other capacity for this congregation. And give as generously as you can if you are financially able. And if you are new to us and still discerning whether this might be a spiritual home for you, please know your presence here is your gift to us, and allow the baskets to pass you by. You may give online at uua.org/giving, text UUAA to 73256, or you can put cash or checks in the baskets. I invite the ushers to come forward now, as our offerings will gratefully be given and received. Thank you. What a blessing that gift is to us. Thank you. Would you all rise in body or spirit? And as the ushers come forward, if you would join me in saying our words of dedicating for our offering. We say these with gratitude in our hearts. Please join me. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Thank you. You may have a seat.
I invite you now into a time of quiet and contemplation. I offer this poem, Pie with Spirits, from Mary Willimeyer. This is the very pumpkin pie my grandmother made, almost. She was a modern woman who knew how to follow recipes. Receipts, she called them, because they had been received. She had a rule for pie crust that was constant until, from time to time, it changed. I have that rule in turn, and it is moved on just a bit from where she left it. This is my special shared moment with her, departed a quarter century. As I work, I am all ages of myself, and the thought of my tall son comes to join us, though he hardly knew her. He makes pies with wild abandon, sculpting them from material and artistry. He has received pie somehow at the level of soul. The three of us make pie together, preheating the oven, cutting butter into flour, adding water, flouring a board, rolling the crust. To honor her, I follow the recipe. To honor him, I change just one thing. To honor myself, I take my time and smile. Let us honor our own spirits and take our own time with a moment of silence.
All who hunger, gather gladly.
About 20 years ago, I spent a long January weekend on Topsail Island, North Carolina, at a spiritual retreat. 12 relative strangers came together in a large beach house to listen, pray, meditate, share, and explore our connections to the divine. One of our leaders, Donald Engstrom, was a big bear of a guy with a nurturing spirit who had lost his soulmate to AIDS back when being HIV positive was a death sentence. The widow Engstrom, as he called himself, spent the weekend in a crocheted shawl, rocking in a chair, sharing his thoughts and dispensing long expositions of wisdom from his place of loss and compassion. At several points during the weekend, we would bring back to the group those messages we had gotten through our meditations, and we were often long-winded as we explored in our limited language the expansive and complex ideas we'd heard. After one such session of sharing, the widow Engstrom rocked in his chair, having been unusually quiet. When he finally spoke, he said only this: "Grandmother Bear says eat more pie." Now, at first we laughed, and then we pondered, and then we decided to take her advice. A run to the grocery store secured the ingredients we needed to make pot pies and berry pies and a chocolate cream pie. As we cooked, we talked more deeply and intimately than we had the rest of the weekend. We got to know each other, share recipes, share stories, and of course, eat pie. Lots of pie. I think often about that experience, and I think it's time for us to consider pie. Not the metaphorical kind or the mathematical kind, although that's real, right? But real, honest to God, stick a fork in it and eat it pie. So who here has a good memory of pie? Yeah, I hear the mms, yep. We all do. Maybe it's the perfect pumpkin pie your aunt made each Thanksgiving, or that amazing spinach pie in the Moosewood cookbook. Where are my Moosewood fans? Yeah, right, you know the one. Or the perfect pizza pie just serendipitously discovered in a tiny pizzeria near Grand Central Station in New York. You say the word pie, and people pause for a moment, the on their lips. There is something mysterious, magical, almost sacred about pie. In the movie Michael, a group of journalists and seekers accompany the Archangel Michael, played by John Travolta, on a road trip to Chicago. They stop at a diner where the waitress rattles off a laundry list of pies. Michael says to her, "Bring us 2 of every kind." And next we see the table laden with cream pies and fruit pies and custard pies. The strangers who had gathered find themselves sharing food, passing plates across the table, talking about why pie is so important. Michael then pauses, looks at one of his companions, played by Andie MacDowell, and tells her to sing her song about pie. Pie, pie, me oh my, nothing tastes sweet, wet, salty, or dry. All at once, oh well, it's pie. Apple, pumpkin, minced and wet bottom. Come by your place every day if you got 'em. Pie, me oh my, I love pie. Thank you. Eating pie and singing that pie song allows MacDowell's character to sing her more important songs, to find her voice, to express her deepest desires. Such is the mystery of pie. In 2002, artist Anissa Mack explored this mystery with an installation outside the Brooklyn Public Library called Pies for a Passerby. Mack set up a picture-perfect miniature white cottage on the steps of the library, and inside she baked apple pies. She made them one at a time and left them one at a time on the windowsills, intending for them to be snatched away. Mac was fascinated by the effects of a free, freshly baked pie on folks passing the makeshift cottage. She would play with them a little too. If you wanted a pie too badly, Mac would do her best to see that you didn't get it. And if you were camped out, hogging the windowsill, obnoxiously yelling, "Hurry up, make the pie," then forget about it. Instead, she would gently steer the pie toward another window, where a patient child happily scooped it up. For 3 weeks, Mac filled the summer Brooklyn air with the smell of freshly baked pies. Something special happened between baker and eater, touching something, I don't know, innocent. It's kind of in all of us, and maybe it's just that we have good childhood memories of pies, but I think it's more. Consider how pie is made. It takes time to make a pie. The crust requires careful but not too much mixing, and chilling and rolling but not too vigorously. A berry pie requires taking time to sort the good berries from the bad, cleaning them up, and even more time if you pick the berries yourself. Making a custard pie, or my favorite chocolate cream pie, requires careful cooking, so it's the right consistency and doesn't burn or scald on the bottom of the pan. And that's just sweet pies. There's savory pies too, quiches and pizzas and shepherd's pies and pot pies that often require a judicious selection of just the right leftovers and just the right gravy. And then we bake the pie. This isn't a quick 15-minute bake. This isn't popping it in the microwave. No, pies take 50, 60 minutes in a preheated oven. The smell builds slowly along with our anticipation. We become acutely aware of the odors emanating from the kitchen, our taste buds watering, our memories evoke the way that only smells can evoke them. And yes, after the baking comes the eating. We pull out a plate and a fork, we sit down at the table, often with other people. We sit and eat pie. We to each other. We talk about the pie. Pie isn't eaten on the run. From start to finish, pie is a slow food. It begs us to savor, to notice the combination of flavors, the flakiness of the crust, the texture of the filling. Is pie holy food? Perhaps. Like comedian Jack Handy says, when you die, if you have a choice between going to regular heaven or pie heaven, choose pie heaven. It might be a trick, but if not, boy. Of course, all this talk about pie, in all this talk, there are some important spiritual lessons that pie teaches us. After all, it was in a spirit of prayer that Grandmother Bear told us to eat pie. And I believe that pie teaches us lessons, not just what our faith is like, but how we might express and experience our faith. For starters, pie reminds us to be present. In the Gospel of Luke and the Christian scriptures, we learn that Jesus and his disciples stopped by the home of Mary and Martha. And while Martha busied herself preparing the meal and providing a comfortable space for these weary travelers, Mary sat and listened to the stories that this band of travelers told. Martha was a bit annoyed and even asked Jesus why it would be okay for her sister to do nothing. But Jesus suggested that Mary had chosen the better part. Not that the food and the comfort wasn't welcome, it was so vital. But at some point, the doing has to end. And it's more important to be present, to stop, to be still, to give thanks. Too often, we hurry through our days and forget to notice our days. We get so busy cooking, we forget to eat. So taking that time for the slow food, to actually eat a slice of pie gives us that welcome pause to stop, to be still, and to consider the grace of our present moment. And baking a pie can be like a prayer or a mantra. While our brains and bodies are doing something rather rote and mechanical, our spirits have time to connect with the innermost corners of our hearts in the loving arms of the divine. Next, pie is a great equalizer. It appeals to, well, everyone. All classes, all ages, all genders and orientations, all cultures and abilities and beliefs. All cultures have some sort of pie. And underneath the particular foodstuffs we use to make our pies across cultures, the process, the cooking, the sitting, the eating, the remembering, the sharing, that is universal. That is simply being human. Pie evokes a sense of hope and comfort. I once worked at a soup kitchen in Durham, North Carolina, where pie was on the menu often. We were serving otherwise a rather plain meal to those who gathered, and we noticed the sadly expected blank and despairing looks on the faces of people who passed through. But when we handed them a slice of pie, their eyes lit up, smiles tugged at the corners of their mouth. Pie, I heard some whisper. For a moment, these people found a bit of comfort, a bit of grace, remembered a bit of their own humanity. Pie gives us bounty out of scarcity. Now, the origins are unknown, but it's thought that the first pies and the billions that have come after were created to make much out of little. We can make a pretty substantial pot pie out of a bit of leftover turkey, a couple of potatoes, a little bit of corn, carrots, peas, barely a cup of flour. What doesn't seem enough to feed 2 people suddenly can feed 6. In our world of single-serving convenience food, pie reminds us to share, and that sharing even the least of what we have can make something that nourishes us all. And pie is forgiving. Even pie baking is forgiving. Just like 3 days ago, my friend Veronica reminded us that it's okay to use store-bought pie crusts and canned fillings and even store-bought pies. She said, what is more important is that you have pie. She doesn't even know that she contributed to the sermon yet. I'll have to tell her. But, and our experiences may vary with the pies we have had. I have had some bland pies, undercooked pies, and overcooked pies, but somehow it's impossible to just throw away a piece of pie, right? You scrape off the burnt crust, you eat around the uncooked center, you add a little whipped cream. Pies don't have to be perfect to be loved. In fact, we may love them a bit more because of their imperfections. Imagine if we approached each other the same way. And pie, of course, brings people together. We tend to bake and share pies with others for various occasions or just because we realize we need pie. Just as the narrator of our story earlier discovered a friend because of pie, so too can we connect to one another over pie. We learn more and share more and understand more about one another and maybe start or renew friendships. And when we bring our wounded hearts together over a slice of pie, we talk. Pie gives us something to do while we work out our hurts and frustrations with each other in a safe, comforting, flavor-filled atmosphere. Now, there's a reason I like to talk about pie in my first service of a sabbatical. Okay, 2 reasons. And sharing pie together, like we'll be doing, is certainly one of them. But the real reason I like to talk about pie in the first service of a sabbatical is this. Just like pie, sabbaticals remind us to slow down, to take our time, to be still, to to give thanks. It holds us in tradition and connection and love. We remember what we love, and who we love, and how we love. We find moments of joy that seem hard-won in these days, and we do it together. Over the next 5 months, we'll talk about what it means to be together, honoring each other and the lessons of the season. We'll engage deep questions and reflect on our connections and our work in the world. And more, we will take our time. This is Manish's sabbatical, to be sure, but it is also an opportunity for you too. Now, not to individually take a break from the congregation, but rather as a congregation to explore together, to breathe, to do this work together in a sacred context. We'll have time to share from our hearts, our joys and our sorrows woven fine together, sometimes even over a slice of pie. And yes, in your own personal journeys over these 5 months, you'll discover some things. You may read a book that lights you up, or take a trip, or celebrate an event that warms your heart, or come across ideas or thoughts or songs or other things that might make you think, I wish I could share this with Manish. In that spirit, I want to invite you to share those things and collect them via a scrapbook. We have a big stack of scrapbooking paper for you to choose from. I invite you to take a sheet or two home and over these few months add things to it. Pictures, quotations, art, doodles, book lists, questions, reflections, anything that says, I thought of you. In late March, we'll collect the pages and put them together and present the scrapbook, or probably a scrap box. And we'll present this to Reverend Manish so he can see a bit of what he missed while he was out. The paper is located today in the social hall near the TV, and then will be in the office throughout the sabbatical, so you can get paper. So yeah, things are hard in the world, and in many of our lives right now. But we have this time to be together and hold one another. And Pi reminds us that we must pause to nourish our bodies and minds so we are able to answer the call of our faith. Pi reminds us that when we live our lives as though everything in our lives is sacred, insight, inspiration, and motivation and creativity can come from the most remarkable places. So whether you take Grandmother Bear as a metaphor for God, or a manifestation of spirit, or the actual voice of an animal guide, we should remember to see one another, to be present to one another, to open ourselves to grace, to stop, to be still, to give thanks, to remember, and of course, eat more pie.
Where
rise and body or spirit. May the blessings of life be upon us and this congregation. May the memories we gather here give us hope for the future. May the love that we share bring strength and joy to our hearts. And the peace of this community be with us all until we are together again. Go in love, go in joy, go eat more pie.